Hello, this is Cheryl from Compass for Your Life, and this is the companion piece to one of my blog posts about travel journals. Mark and I go to quite a few places, and as you can see, I have a few things that I've picked up along the way, pamphlets and things that go to different places and that type of thing. And as you can see, they're very beautiful pictures and lots of topography that's really lends itself well to cutting up and putting into a travel journal. So I started with these, and then I got the idea. We have these road atlases in the car because sometimes your phone just doesn't cut it when it comes to finding where you are. So we have several of these that are kind of old and ready, but I just thought the inside of these are really very graphic, very colorful, and I thought they'd make fun pages for a travel journal. So I took apart one that was for the United States, and as you can see, I have lots and lots of paper. It's just a simple thing to take the staples out of the spine, and I created my own travel journal with that, so it was just more of an experiment. I did stitch this, hand stitch this with thread to make it a little sturdier for the spine. And then I put the pages together with just a hole punch. If you're going to make one of these, I would recommend doing what is called a spiral. They have these that you can get at any office supply store. They can make them for you, or places like Hobby Lobby or Dick Blick. Well, I don't know if Dick Blick sells these, but they sell the blanks. The machine is at Hobby Lobby, I know. And it makes it easier because then you can lay things flat, things are sturdier. I would highly recommend this because the simple punches, they aren't cutting it. If I hadn't taken and hand stitched this, I'm sure it would have fallen apart by now. And if you're going to be putting more and more things in, you want it to be sturdy. Hand sewing worked very well, and I think actually probably a machine would work really well with this too. I would put a stabilizer behind it because the pages they're sturdy, but they're not quite that sturdy. I would think that it would need a little bit of support so it wouldn't tear when your machine was going through. But I think it would accept sewing machine embellishments fairly well. I like to go to certain different places close by. Colorado, Kansas, Iowa, those are certain states that are close by, along with Nebraska, which is where we live. So I chose those as the states to do for my different pages. This is empty because I haven't filled that one in, but each page I did a different experiment. This one, I don't know if you can see it, is Wyoming. And if you've ever been to Wyoming, you'll get this little figure here. The wind blows all the time, and so that's kind of why I decided to do that. But this was an experiment for using different kinds of markers. This is watercolor, crayon. They're actually in a pencil, and you take the water after you've colored it in. And this is actually regular crayon, and those are from Crayola, that what I've used. These are the watercolor pencils, and like I say, you just take and you color, and then you take some water and brush on it, and it makes a really nice watercolor effect. The color's a little more intense with this than regular watercolor. I did find that this paper, while it does take moisture fairly well, the markers did really well, and this is what I used for that. They're a dual with a nice felt tip on the one end, and then on the other end is just more of a finer point, and they worked really well on this. The moisture didn't tear the paper, and I scrubbed pretty hard, so this paper does do fairly well with water. Just not a lot of water because it does start to buckle, and then peel. So if you're going to do something with watercolors, keep that in mind that you need to use something that isn't quite so wet. Then I went to the next page, which is Nebraska, and I just kind of thought I'd work on seeing how well the paper would take different types of glue, different types of tape. The heavier stock, it doesn't stick down very well. I did use some glue. I wouldn't recommend anything that's like a heavy cardstock that's shiny. It doesn't work very well with this application. But as you can see, I've done finer papers from little pamphlets and such and covered them. I don't know, here also I've taken some of the map and torn a fine edge on it to make a cloud, and it does separate fairly well. So this application, if you do like to do that kind of raw edge sort of effect, it does work for that. It does take a little effort. It doesn't peel apart very easily, so you have to be really careful. The fray is very delicate. Again, the markers worked really well. This is more marker that I was just showing you. And I didn't do it as wet, and see, it does accept a sketch fairly well. The lines hold pretty well. So the paper does perform pretty well with that. Some of the things I also thought about doing is folds. The paper does hold a really nice fold. This is several sheets together. I wanted it to be sturdy to make a pocket for my little notebook that I take along with me. I take and put notes and that type of thing in here. And so I wanted a place to carry that was all together. And I think if you wanted to do some origami with this, it would work really well. This page I used a cheap, just plain acrylic straight. I don't know if you can see that, it's not really well. Straight acrylic out of the tube. This isn't diluted at all, and yet you can still see the map underneath. That wasn't very wet, and the paint's very sturdy. It's not a liquidy kind of thing as far as being wet. So this application really worked pretty well if you want to use acrylics. This is an inexpensive brand. I don't know. I thought since it's a craft project, I'm not going to use one of my better paints on this, but I think tempera paint would probably work if it's a light application of water, if you're using it fairly thickly. It does dry really quickly too, so that's a good thing if you're impatient like I am. It did accept the tape fairly well. I've taped some of these pages together. I wanted to make like pockets for some of the maps and things. If you can see here, I put a couple pieces together. I don't think that this is a really good application for this. The paper is just, it's more for decorative. I don't think if you want to use it for anything that's kind of sturdy, I think to put it in a different format like a sketchbook is probably best, using that support for the paper itself. This is one of the pages I made. We went to Chicago, and this is kind of what started the whole thing. This is the bean, and I colorized that on the computer. We went to the Palmer House, which is a place to stay there in Chicago. If you can go there, I recommend it. The ceiling in the lobby is got to be seen to be believed. And this was a restaurant we went to. It was kind of a fun place. And then this is on the wharf. Again, I was just experimenting to see how well the paper would hold, having something glued over the top of it. This is separate paper, and did some stamping on that. It holds envelopes fairly well, so that if you want to do little envelopes on your pages, they work pretty well. And this was like a brownie recipe from the hotel, the Palmer House, which again, if you want to go there, I highly recommend that place. But these are just sort of some ideas. I think that these would make wonderful cutouts for like borders and different shapes and things in behind, because the paper does hold an edge when you cut it fairly well. It doesn't fray. So all in all, old atlases make wonderful paper for projects. I wouldn't use them for a book per se. I would either paste them or bind them with one of the spiral, or I don't know if the thermal would work very well with this application. I think that they would peel, but enjoy. It'll be fun just to kind of play with it, and I'd love to see what you guys come up with. After looking at that video, I decided that maybe it would be a little bit easier for you to see some of the project things that I used if I just did it this way. Like I say, this is the dual pen with the two ends on it. That's Tombow Crayola with the colored pencils that are watercolor. And they're just a simple pencil that you use with a paintbrush, plain old acrylics, and crayons.